Okay, so Nitty Bumblebee. That's one of yours,
Yeah,
correct? Very
right.
okay.
Yeah.
Very lovely person. It looks like.
Well,
Okay.
well, she's not mine.
Well, she's from your channel.
Hey,
I know we're
Bree.
not
Hey,
supposed to
love.
be.
Hey,
Hey,
you.
Bree.
Hey, can we
Welcome.
make a clarification here about
Absolutely.
consent? Because
Absolutely.
Ooh, yeah.
animals and children can't consent, so I don't know why you all are talking about them being part of the LGBTQ community when one of the requirements is that the partners be consenting, and children and animals can't consent. It's a red herring people like to throw out. It's a
Right.
what they call refuge and absurdity. Like, oh, if you allow gay people to get married, what's going to keep him from marrying his cat? Oh my gosh, it's just a absurdity argument that's just silly.
You are 100% correct, Bree.
Wait, did someone bring up children?
Maps.
That's
Oh,
what
maps.
Mine,
Yes, yes, yes.
minor
But
attracted people.
yeah. But I mean, it's still within their right to advocate. I'm not agreeing with it, but I'm saying based on the laws of the land here in the United States, they could gain an audience with politicians and make their argument. Who
But they'll
hasn't?
never be part of the LGBTQ. That's the
Oh
thing.
no,
Right.
of course not. Of course not. I'm not
Oh,
saying they are, but I don't know too much about who controls what letters go on there.
Well, consent is a requirement, so it doesn't nobody
Right.
controls it. It's just consent is a requirement for inclusion. And children can't consent, so it doesn't matter how much the maps want to advocate for whatever they want. I hate that term. They're pedophiles or pederast or whatever the situation may be that they're in.
Piracy, yeah.
But regardless, they can advocate for maybe better treatment in society, like options for them to go in and get the proper treatment, but they're not. So a good rule of thumb is if it's a philia, then it's not part of the LGBTQ. Something that's a philia means it's not a positive impact or influence in your life, I guess would be the best way to say it. It's a philia is an affliction. So that's just some clarification we need to make. So if you could like that other word with the philia on the end, or zoophilia, or any of these things, those are not part of the LGBTQ
Right.
by definition. They're a philia, which doesn't fit into the group. Not to be confused with like people who are furries, which aren't zoophilia people. And that's not necessarily a part of the LGBTQ either, which people like to try to lump in with it. So there's a lot of drag queens are not part of the LGBTQ, and if they were, most drag queens are gay men, so they would be
Correct.
part of the LGB part. They wouldn't, so it wouldn't do any good getting rid of the drag queen story hour by divorcing the LGB from the TQIA, because the drag queens reading stories are in the LGB. They're in
Right.
that part. They're not in the trans queer, and because most drag, not all of them, but most drag queens are gay men. Some of them are cis men, but most of them are gay men. Hardly any of them are trans people, because trans people have kind of a dysphoria about presentation. So they want to most. I'm not saying all, but most trans people just want to try to blend in, right? To be
Okay. This is what I don't get with like the drag community, right? Because you do have drag kings where women dress up as men.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like when gay men and sometimes straight feminine men do it, it's a big issue. But
It's
if
for
women
entertainment
do it,
purposes, though.
you
Just so
don't
know.
ever hear anybody griping about it.
No, but drag queen's been accepted in U.S. cultures for a while now. That's been like a staple of American culture.
Long time.
Like back during like wartime, straight men used to just dress up in drag. It was just for entertainment purposes.
look
So
at
it's
the
like,
USO shows, yeah, like
Mhm.
Or MASH.
yeah, exactly. So it's not like it's like we've observed at least that in
Or
society a
fucking
lot longer.
Shakespeare. There were no women on the stage in Shakespeare's time. There were no. It
Right.
was all, yeah. So
It's effectively constant drag.
and
Kissing.
and that's the only place you could take your kids to see a show. So you were the only options to go see a show was to go see a drag show.
Romeo and Juliet, eh?
Right.
Yeah, that was initially a drag show because you know what? Julio
By
Julio.
definition.
Could have been Julio.
Julio.
Julio is packing, right?
Julio was Mexican. That's what it was. He had the Vato accent and everything. He's like, yo, Holmes, you look pretty, Holmes.
Romeo and Julio, you know.
No wonder the
So-
families were so rival.
So you see how easily these stupid arguments crumble when you like look at them under any kind of scrutiny at all. When you think about logical stuff like consent,
Yes.
who can consent to what, and who's doing what, and how long we've been doing it, and why we're doing it.
And
Like
we-
again, drag being once again the only type of entertainment that you could take your kids to see for about 500 years. So I digress. Someone else can take the
We love
take
you,
the podium
Bree.
away from me.
no, and I
what's the
appreciate
plus
you, Bree.
stand for,
Thank you.
real quick? I need to know, what does the plus stand for? Because I know it's LGBTIA plus.
The plus is for people who don't know where they fall. For people that are still feeling things out.
Okay. And I'm assuming I stands
It-
for intersex, right?
Yeah,
Okay. I just want to.
A,
And
A is for asexual or ace.
yeah. It's for
okay.
generally asexual or ace.
And is
And
I
I've heard
for
people say,
intersexual?
and I've heard people
Mhm.
say that the Q is queer, but also questioning. So
I think the Q.
yeah,
I believe the Q is more questioning.
yeah.
wait, so I'm kind of confused. So how does? Okay, so I get everything, right? But I thought, like, let's say when you look at asexuals, ace flux, right? How does that fit in like that community? That wouldn't that be like just a preference outside of that? Wouldn't that just be like just a person's preference on whether or not they want to be aromantically more involved than rather just horny?
Well, you have people that have their individual, you know, when it comes to people being asexual or ace, aromantic is also another term that falls under that A. Don't necessarily not get horny, right? I want to make that clear.
Human nature.
I've been with an asexual partner. I know that they don't that they still get horny. That's not
Oh no, I didn't mean it that way. What I'm trying to say is that I felt like when it comes to asexuals, that's more of like something different entirely than what the community is trying to represent. Because like if you look at lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, right? So those are more of like physical. I'm not saying physical. So just correct me if anything, but it feels like it's more of a physical representation, right? And then when I look at asexual, it's more of like an internal representation of how that person like interacts with other
Okay.
people on a sexual level.
So the thread that binds is going to be a history of social stigmatization and oppression. That's the binding thread for that anagram, right? For consenting adults that were stigmatized by society or oppressed by society for being gay or trans, for being that way as a consenting adult, right? That's the stigma.
Okay, I have a question. Before you like disappear and I never see you again, I have this thing, right? So, because I have a trans friend who I've spoken to, and me and her had the same conversation. Where I don't know if you've noticed, like the rappers in Florida, there was a situation where a gentleman got involved with a trans woman. I guess she didn't tell him, or he didn't notice, and one thing led to another. And then after he found out the truth, he ended up killing her. Now, outside of the murder and the homicide of it, what's your perspective on when you deal with, let's say, a cisgendered male? Do you think that most trans people should let the person know that they're a trans woman, or I mean, I just want your put out this.
So for a long time, the goal of transitioning, right, was to disappear into the mist of being on the other side, right? Like no one would ever know. You'd have the full surgery from top to bottom was the ultimate goal. But people aren't feeling like they have to confine themselves to those binaries anymore. So that's when things start to get complicated for someone who's just trying to live their life. I don't think they should have to disclose that part of themselves to anybody unless they're intending to get intimate with them. At the point where they're talking about getting intimate, I mean, you're going to have to deal with that with any partner. Sometimes your partner's not going to have. Sometimes you're going to get someone in a situation and they're not going to have the body underneath their clothes that you expected, whether it's because they're trans or something else. You know, there's thousands of trans people are only like 3% of the population, but you know, there's a higher percent of the population with things like micro penises and things like that could ruin the situation. So I guess the question would be is, would it be any more of an expectation for a man with a micro penis to have to disclose that to a woman before getting intimate? I guess a cis man with a micro penis would not be expected to do that in society, I suspect. So I just don't understand why that's the forward position. I mean, obviously the man with the micro penis is going to want to say something before, you know, the clothes come off, right? But that's not
Maybe
something.
if they're
That's not something.
confident.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not something that they're going to bring up on the first date, which I think is what the expectation is for a trans woman.
I mean, just to be clear, I've heard stories of it. I have a homegirl up by Poconos or somewhere where she said one of the best partners she'd had was a Jewish guy who worked for UPS who had a micro penis.
Yeah.
So
I
I
mean,
don't, you know, I think like the tool doesn't necessarily count, but that's not, obviously that doesn't fit like into the discussion. But okay, so I have another one for you. Do you think, because I'm running a lot of things by you that I ran by someone else, but how about, do you think it's safe to say, because of this conversation also came up where I think that people at a later age when they transition, it's not the process they were expecting, right? So it might take time to work on like their appearance to be more feminine. Now you have like therapists that offer like this whole set where, you know, you're transgender, you come in, she'll tell you the clothes you can wear to bring out like the feminine physique. She'll coach you on how to talk. She'll coach you on like late, because obviously a lot of these, you know, a lot of people that are transitioning men into a female, you know, they have to learn like how, you know, the old style, like classy, how women femininity, all this works. So do you think that some people don't, like, they're not prepared at that point, later stage in life, where they may not be passable?
I don't. So I don't think that we should have those kind of standards. I think there's still. I mean, if someone wants to learn feminine etiquette or whatever, and they're in our cultural stuff or how to behave in public as like a lady and stuff like that, fine. That's their personal preference. I'm a bug girl. I go out and chase bugs in the field. I'm not worried about whether or not my behavior is feminine enough to pass in society. I think that it's problematic that that's even a topic. I think that culturally, I have things about me that are girly as hell, and I have things about me that people might think are sort of boyish, I guess. So, yeah, it's hard to say what I think about how you should conform to the society you live in. Obviously, if you want to be perceived and treated like a member of that gender, you need to be perceived as a member of that gender by the people around you, but that doesn't necessarily adhere to one set of behavioral standards, because humans are a diverse species with diverse cultures from around the world. So what the expectations of a female presenting person in India is, for instance, might be different than Ireland or South America, right? So we can't even pin it down to one culture than what the expectation is. I don't think we should pin it on trans people to try to get in the mindset of any specific one, right?
Uh, I would agree. The reason why I ask that is because I've had like other friends who are straight, and their argument is that, you know, if you're gonna be, it was a pretty. I mean, the conversation with the folks that I had, it wasn't the most intelligent group of people, like in person. So, like, so don't hold this against me. So obviously, their way of thinking was, if you're gonna be trans, you have to be passable. Like you have to, or at least that's what their wants were. I looked at it, the way I looked at it was, they were straight men, but I would ask them, hey, if she was passable, would you sleep with her? And then they would get quiet, because then they're like, if I answer it a certain way, like this person might have a bad perception of me from this point on, which I wasn't judging. But that little pause gave me the whole thing of, if she did look like a woman, you would actually sleep with her.
So
Matthew,
passable is a
Matthew.
silly concept though, because a
Right.
a femboy can be passable, or a butch tomboy can be passable, right?
hold on one second,
So-
guys. Nitty, there's somebody by the name of Stephanie.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Steph.
Stephanie Helms.
Perfect. Thank you.
She's with me.
Okay, perfect. Wanted to make sure because you know
I'm
there
with
we have a lot of weird people. You're with him. You're with her. You're just with everybody. Welcome.
I wanted to say, you know, yeah, I was gonna say something akin to like femboyness, right? Like I have a fairly effeminate appearance to a lot of people. I'm not saying that.
Oh yeah, I could
That
put some
must-
makeup on you and make you look fucking hot. I
You
swear.
know, I'd like
Do
to
it,
visit
Nitty.
your
Do it, Nitty.
closet. Thank you.
But you know, and some people might just by default look at some otherwise like cis men, but due to like how their body looks or whatever, they might think, oh, that's a passable woman, when really they're not. And so it's
But-
like you
Well,
just can't do
but
that.
Nitty,
What?
that's the ultimate question is, what is a passable man? What is a passable woman? Aren't these
Thank you.
subjective
Someone-
judgments?
Yes,
Good
but
question,
but don't you
Stephanie.
think? But don't you think that when some people use the word, I'm assuming from my side, that I call them. Sometimes I refer to them as the Neanderthals, but I love them.
Oh,
But-
you have
but-
a side? You have a side? What's
No,
your side?
my side group,
Ooh.
my side group. Like,
Oh, okay.
homeboys that I debate with. So when I ask them, they're like, "Hey, it has to look like that. What like a cisgendered woman is what they say." And I'm just like, okay, so like, how much more of a
Right.
woman can you look like?
What let me ask you this. What does a cisgender woman look like? Do you
A
know?
cisgendered, I wouldn't necessarily. I would say is, I'm gonna get heat for this because they asked me the same question. I got scolded by a trans woman. I would
Well,
say.
I'm asking you,
more.
I'm
what
so
do-
sorry for saying this.
Have you? Let me ask you this. So you since you brought up that aside, have you ever been scolded by a cisgender woman about the same topic?
No, I only got pushback from
Oh.
people that were in the trans community, more than likely. I don't think I've ever was pushed by like,
Are
let's say
you?
someone
I
was.
bet you.
sure about
I bet you
that.
get pushed back from a Mon Khalif. A lot of people
I
did.
mean,
Yeah.
the whole by Khalifa, the porn star.
No.
That's only Maya Khalifa I know.
Amani Khalif, the boxer, who just won gold at the Olympics.
Oh no, I don't know too much about any of that situation.
You're
I stayed
thinking
away
about
from
me.
it.
Oh goodness. Okay, I know who you're talking about.
One of the women that I lived with before I transitioned would probably be getting a lot of hassles now about those bathroom bills just because she happened to be 6'4".
I think so much the pushback comes from, let's say for example, the Conservative Party
I'm sorry,
ran.
I
with,
interrupted.
Like
I interrupted you when you.
I'm sorry.
I just want to say hello to Purple.
Hello.
I'd say akin to like people getting the videos on World Star stuff like that, where I guess the whole idea is marketed and engineered in a way where it makes trans people look like bad in the limelight. I think that's just where it comes from. I just think that a lot of America, it's still pretty racist. They're still stuck in their old ways, and nothing's gonna really change unless we implement policies to protect that group.
Yeah, the
Well,
far right
sure,
is
and
definitely
As a start,
go
I
ahead,
meant.
Perps. Go ahead,
The-
Perps.
the far right is definitely trying to push policies to basically make it illegal to transition.
And that's what we're seeing in a lot of the states.
Okay, but then here's the argument I'm hearing from conservatives, at least the ones that have like an actual argument to make. So it's kind of like the whole food stamp like debate in this country, where just like red states will say, well, why do these people get food stamps? Why should they be able to get these things if they're not working for it? So I think the same sentiment with the
Because they're
trans community
hungry.
is like, yes, but then for the trans side, they're looking at it as, should we? Because if I'm not mistaken, my homegirl paid for her transitioning, like her HRTs, but in
All of
some
us do.
states, yeah, in some states you can, like, I think if I'm not mistaken, in New York they give them to you. So here in New York State, I think they
No.
afford you. I'm pretty sure they do here because I know of a woman that didn't pay for her transitioning.
Well, it's a medically, if it's determined to be medically necessary, then yes, that's true. And why
Yes.
should that be any
A
different?
cis woman
Why
can
sh-
get
why
a
should
boob
that-
job for the same
Right.
requirements.
Why
if-
should
if
that
she's
be
having-
any
No,
different
I have to
from?
pay for my boob job. Sorry.
No, if you're
All of us
if you-
have different circumstances.
if your insurance, if you like are like suicidal about it, for
Right.
instance, and you report it to your psychiatrist, depends on if you have insurance, of course.
Correct.
Then you can get that covered on your insurances for psychologically medically necessary.
And if you have large breasts, they pay for a reduction. They'll put implants in to keep them perky. And if
Mhm.
you've had breast cancer, they pay for that to be done. I mean, so there are always circumstances where they do get paid, but cosmetically, no, let's pay for our own.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
a trans woman's
cosmetic-
not getting it
No,
cosmetically
it's a
necessarily.
medical. It's deemed. It is medical. It is health care,
Right.
and I'm a firm believer in that is health care. Just like I do, and here's going to be sometimes not popular. I believe women's health and abortion is health care.
Yeah,
course
but
it
it's I guess what I was trying to say was that on the outside, some people may look at, let's say, New York City recipients who get food stamps, Section 8, and they'll be like, oh, they're living, a good life. But then the reality is that we get a certain amount per month. It's not really that great, and we only get subsidized for 30%. So I think that's how the right side views things, where it's just they fail to see that it's not so clear cut. It's not like people are receiving
So
free services and whatnot. So they
Well,
they
it's
generate a hate
important.
for it.
It's important to pinpoint who are using those benefits too, right? That when you look at who are using who benefit the most from EBT, it's the deep south right now. That's where EBT is used the most and
Right, you're
most
correct.
prominently. Yeah.
Red states, yes.
So it's prominent, a lot of poverty,
Hmm.
and it's not, and then most of it's not along race lines, right? It's it afflicts white neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, Hispanic neighborhoods, poverty in the South because of, well, I think poor infrastructural planning. But
No business. Yeah.
Well,
they'll
if
blame
we're
the
going
Civil
to-
War, but
Hunter Biden's laptops has a good point. If you tell me tax dollars are going to cosmetic boob jobs,
Hey, I
fine.
agree with you.
Let's save some money by cutting back on bumps, bring on the boobs, and I am sure that Nitty would agree.
I'm
Because
I'm
Nitty
right there with you.
likes titties.
titties.
That's the way
So
it goes.
can I ask a question? I want to go back to a question that was asked. Is it the opinion of the chat that a child can consent to transition?
No, because the
Trans
child
grandpa
doesn't
said no.
fully understand
I think
everything
that
that's
depends.
involved.
to socially transition, there's different ways of the transition. I think that children generally they've always been allowed to sort of socially transition or feel out their identity. It's only been in the last few years that people have been really putting their foot down about saying, oh no, if you're, well, I don't know, I guess there's always been that that stigma saying, oh, if you're a boy you have to act this way, if you're a girl you have to act that way in society. But
Yeah, I jumped the gun there because anybody who's asked me that question before was talking about surgery.
Right. And
Well,
that's what I think in CNA's talking about the surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see that that's a thing that's really happened. I think most of the time, if someone that's a minor is getting any kind of treatment at all, it's like puberty suppressant treatments. It's not
Well, and there are
Not
very few
surgical.
doctors that will consult
May I?
anyone about
May I?
even
May I?
hormones if they have not seen a psychologist, a psychiatrist first, or a therapist at least,
Even those
before
things
they
are really
start on the
subjective,
hormones.
though,
Because
May I?
depending on the therapist
yeah,
or who you're going to see or who's going to evaluate you and what their agendas are. It really has to be an individual choice. I think it's harmful sometimes to try to make these determinations on our own and say, well, here's the cutoffs. It really is going to be a family decision and it's going to be up to the provider. And that's where I think we become in danger as a society, is when we start to dictate what that looks like instead of allow people to make individual decisions personally.
Well, and that's,
May
I think that
may
goes back to
may
where, go ahead, sorry,
may I say something about say something about
please,
pediatric gender affirming care?
please.
Okay. Can a child consent to uh, 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 conversion therapy? Can a child consent
Mm.
to Can a child consent to cancer treatment? Can a child consent to any of these things?
To an
The answer is
appendectomy.
That's a really good point.
obviously no.
Correct. That's why
The
they have
answer is
grants.
obviously no. Now, bear with me. I just want to draw this out a wee bit. I did not consent to conversion therapy. I did not consent to being administered testosterone at the age of 12. I did not consent to this. Can a child consent to that? This child, when this child was a child, fought tooth and nail to be who this child was as a human being. So I think that those people who insist that a child cannot make a decision, they're right. But a child can be listened to. A child can be loved. A child who expresses gender dysphoria in the strongest possible way from the earliest possible age, and I would urge you to look up when gender identity is forged, between the ages of 2.5 and 5,
Yeah.
before social structures impinge upon that child's gender identity, before all of that, when that child has only a few words to express who they are to the people who are their caregivers. When those children, those 0.2% of children, tell their caregivers that no boy, no girl, when they say that, perhaps it would be good to consult with specialists and kind of work through, what is this child telling me? Because your children aren't you. Your children aren't the way you are. Most cisgender people do not have a problem with gender because they identify with their gender. It's never been a problem for them. Ever. Never been a problem. And therefore, it's never been anything that they've needed to even think about. But for transgender children, it is a big problem. And for transgender children, it is a problem that when it's not talked about, when it's not addressed, moves through their entire lives without being addressed. And usually because they're encountered with disapproval, with dissuasion, with conversion, with being taught that they're not who they know they are.
Stephanie, can I ask you a question? And if it's,
Sure.
you know, I know that you can. So, because I'm not trying to confront you, but the gender makeup and our identity, if that formulates between those ages, and I've run a lot of parenting classes and helped a lot of parents, and really at that age of a child, parents are not open to those kind of discussions. It's more behavioral,
No,
like
they're not.
don't wet on the bed, or don't poop here, or don't hit your sister, or you know,
Pretty
it's
much.
and so it's not sitting down and talking to them because they're pretty immature at that point. But it's not that I don't disagree with you, but how would you recommend people move forward in that, or parents? I mean, like my son, when he was little, if he put a dress on, says I'm cute, I'm like, go ahead, wear the dress, have fun today, who cares?
Oh,
You know, but not every parent is like that, and that's a very young
oh
age.
no.
So how would we protect that age, because that's a very vulnerable age.
I think that's the parents' own insecurities, though. It's not the child's insecurities. I think the person at that point, the parent needs to look at themselves and say, "Why am I uncomfortable with my, my assigned male at birth child trying on a dress? Why does
I,
that bother
Yeah,
me? What is
I
it?
yeah.
What
don't
is it?"
I don't think it's
Go ahead,
insecurities.
Hayden.
I think it's fear of the unknown.
Would it be safe to say that, like for example, there was a recent, I forgot who it did the whole documentary. They went to places like South Africa and they asked these different indigenous tribes about like these things that are happening in America, and their claim to it is that it's the opposite. Obviously, like they don't agree with it. So then, would it be safe to say that a child brought under a certain tradition or culture, the parents want to instill those traditions and values. Therefore, it does kind of like circumvent and it takes them down a route where the whole idea of transitioning isn't, within their sphere.
Well,
Well, let me put it this way. Can I answer this
I
briefly, because it's not
sure,
personal.
go ahead, and I'd
My
love to answer your question.
my nephew is gay, and I grew up in a Mormon family, for real. And he was not accepted. So he left Utah and went to LA. Who knows what he went through there? He was a model. Anyway. And my brother, after a couple years, said to me, I had to really think about it. How would I feel if I was attracted to a different, if I were attracted to men and I just had to change it to be accepted? And I thought that would be kind of hard. It's like, it took you how many years instead of just accepting your son? So, I mean, we're talking about some major hangups here, and this is about an adult man that came out. That's all. And so I think to have this perception that maybe parents can get over themselves and be more tolerant of even a child, we have a long way to go for that. I don't know what the answers are,
We do,
but I
we
just
do,
want to put
but
out it's serious. There's major problems.
yeah, we do have a long way to go. But you know what? We've come a long way because I
Yeah.
was born in 1953.
Wow.
And when I told my mom, when I was doing an exercise, uh, that uh, because I'd had a foot injury. I burned my left foot when I was 2.5, and I had to pick up marbles on the carpet so that I didn't get roping and stuff. And when I was picking up the marbles, which was painful. I mean, you get third-degree burn on your foot and you're doing this stuff. It hurt. Uh, uh, and and in the middle of one of those little sessions where mom throws the marbles on the floor, pick up the marbles. She said, "Good boy," and I said, "No, girl." I don't know why. I didn't have words. I didn't have these highfalutin words and standards. And I know that there are children today, and they're documented, and that there are stories that are true stories of people like me, children like me, who tell that story. And instead of being told, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. Or in later incidences, in my very young growing up, uh, we're going to need to take you to see a psychiatrist. Or further, you're not developing like a young man should, so we're going to need to take you to see an endocrinologist. Maybe that what's evolved has been an understanding that there are people like me, children like me.
We're
The
gonna
entire medical profession
But we need to be
says,
tolerant overall, though. I mean, I've been accused of being a dyke or too manly. Um, that's not true, but because I like to fix things, or I have different
well,
interests, or because I could work on cars or took the initiative, and so that would also be seen as you're not woman enough. It's so there's a
well,
lot of
yeah, and
perceptions that
that's the intersection. That's the
really
intersection because
a
we
mind trap.
always talk about trans women. We never talk about trans men. We
Yeah,
never
but I'm
always
not.
talk about trans girls. We
Yeah, and
never
it's
talk about
She's
see
trans.
not
those
trans man though.
those ideas are there even if to say I'm not transitioning, I'm not a guy, I've always
Right.
been a woman, or and it's still not accepted. It's
And
just
the
that is weird to
conversation
me.
always devolves down to what is a woman, not according to sex, but according to perception.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you woman enough? And this is like you can go through first wave feminism, second wave feminism, third wave feminism, and get to the point where it's always a judgment on the part of all the boys in here is, are you fuckable?
On that note, I just
That's
want to
where
That
it
is
publicly
comes
say,
down.
accountability.
hey,
Wait, you're
beautiful
asking
Hi,
people.
us?
Summer.
You're asking
Hey,
us that as
Hello.
men?
time
Hi,
out. We're gonna
Summer.
we're gonna let
Hold on.
Summer talk.
What's up,
Yeah,
beautiful
Summer.
people?
Are you
Hey,
ask,
How's everybody?
are you
I'm
asking
the,
that like
so
to every man there, Hazel? I just want to know.
I
Is
was
that
just,
towards
can you give me a
us?
second to
Master,
talk for a second?
Master,
That would be
let
great. I'm just
let
popping in
Summer
and
talk.
I'm gonna pop off. I just wanted to come say hey to the new faces. Hello, beautiful people. How y'all doing? I'm Summer. I'm the lady. This is my page or whatever. Christina and me host a bunch of different stuff. So I just wanted to come up and say hey to everybody. I'm wrapping up this thing I'm watching
Hello.
and then I'm join you guys. Beautiful conversation. I absolutely love it. So just wanted to come up and say hey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me back, and welcome to my community. This is a lot of people from my chat, so
Hello.
Hey, welcome. Both communities uniting. You know what I mean? Like I think it's a little nice
we'll
little
have
fit that
fun,
we
I
all
promise.
Hey, Nitty killed it yesterday. Never knew
have. Yeah,
Nitty, but he killed it yesterday. Oh yeah.
You
yeah.
mean the
Well,
last
I
time
felt
I
the
was
vibe.
on, or
Yeah.
Last time, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. He killed it.
I was at work like, oh my god, I wish I could freaking jump up. But
Well,
I'm gonna
and
join you guys here in a little bit. I just wanted to come up and say hey. I'm gonna let you guys get back to y'all's convo.
and tonight it's a great conversation with everybody. I mean, my gosh, eyes are being open, questions are being asked and answered without judgment. It's great.
Hey, that's what it's all about: learning, education, and true freedom, baby. So, all
And
right, I'll holler at y'all in a little bit.
have fun.
Hey, while we're talking about transitioning and parenting, and we're trying to make what almost sounds like a legal determination of when a child can give an informed consent. I had to work some cases where there were laws passed where parents were forced to give children certain treatment. They couldn't say, no, I don't believe in antibiotics if it endangered the child. So we have laws against that. So I wonder what everyone's perspective is when it comes to transgenderism, especially if that child is suicidal, if that's something that you would think would rise to that level.
Well,
Uh,
this isn't
I,
really
I,
on
I, I
transgender,
just before we move on, it's not. I want to make it clear that transgenderism is not really it's not an ism. It's a
Yeah, no, not really.
condition. It's a place. It's another way of being human. It's not that when it's used that way, when it's placed that way, it falls into this this area of language that presents trans some kind of ideology, and we're not. We're
If you
just
if you
people.
just invert it,
We're just
you can see how
human
silly it
beings
sounds.
living in a
Yeah,
different way.
tell me the
Cis
words that we should be
cis
using when we communicate.
like you
Correct
wouldn't say
me. I'm not
cisgenderism, right? You wouldn't that just doesn't sound right. You wouldn't think being cisgender is an ism, so the inverse of that wouldn't be an ism
It's not a
either.
belief.
Yeah.
It's not a belief. It's an experience, and it's a very
Mhm.
uncommon experience, and that's okay. But because it's uncommon, it doesn't need to be labeled as being not quite normal. I mean, from
there's 8 billion of
in
us.
using using language, normal would be, well, yeah, okay, I'm abnormal, but who isn't? You know, it's it's it particularly recently, it's a that phrasing and framing has been uh, has been used to other us, and we're not othered. And those of us who are uh, willing to uh, say we're trans and not go into a closet with nicer clothes or more appropriate clothes for ourselves, uh, we're trying to overturn that that notion that somehow or another we haven't been here for centuries, millennia. We're people. We're just not a lot of people.
Keep up the
And
fight.
we
Like it.
love you, and we crave love just like you do. We love you. We do. We just crave the same kind of reciprocation somehow or another.